Does the Bible say that Christians need to tithe? Are you robbing God if you don't? You know, we've heard it for so many years, haven't we? There's even billboards across the country that say, you're robbing God if you don't give Him your tithes and your offerings, quoting Malachi from the Old Testament. But you know, in the Old Testament, in the book of Malachi, they're being told to bring their tithes into the storehouse. Storehouse, maybe we should hit the pause button and talk about that one for a minute. The truth is that in the Old Testament, their tithes and their offerings related to things like grain, and they were supporting the Levitical priesthood. That's right, the other tribes of Israel were mandated to give a certain percentage in order to support those who would represent them to God. And that was the tribe of Levi, you know, the tribe of Aaron, the tribe in which all of those Levitical priests came from. They weren't allowed to own their own property or to work other jobs or obtain any other income. And so they lived off of the support given to them from the tribes of Israel. And that's what the tithe really was. In fact, we see this in Matthew 23:23. Jesus says that tithing is a matter of the law. But remember that as a Christian, you're not under the law. Christ is the end of the law for all those who believe. So if you're not under the law, then you're not under a tithe. And if you're dead to the law, then you're dead to a tithe. So then what would motivate a person like you to give? Well, the Bible tells us to give freely from the heart, not under pressure. That's the new covenant way of grace giving. Remember that grace giving should be just like grace living. After all, the theology doesn't change when we get out our wallets. So we're to be motivated from the heart in an atmosphere of freedom. I know what you may have heard. You may have heard that tithing is the starting point. You know, we start with 10% and then go from there. But the reality is that grace is not stricter than the law. And the law is not the starting point for God's grace. After all, do we start with avoiding pork and shellfish and then graduate to avoiding other foods? Do we start with observing a Friday night to Saturday Sabbath and then graduate to observing other days of the week? Do you see how when we teach that the law is the starting place for God's grace, we've missed the mark. We've missed the whole point. The truth will always set us free. Now, someone might be wondering about Melchizedek. Why is it that that story about Abraham giving a tenth of his spoils of war is smack dab in the middle of Hebrews? After all, are we not required then to give 10% like Abraham gave Melchizedek? Well, there's another meaning to that story and another purpose that it's recounted in the book of Hebrews. It has nothing to do with Christians being under a mandate to give 10%. In fact, the passage tells us right there in Hebrews that Abraham was the lesser and then Melchizedek was the greater. And Abraham gave out of respect to the greater, and then the greater blessed the lesser. So what does this represent? Well, remember that in Abraham, in his lineage, in his heritage, we have the tribe of Levi. And so the passage is simply saying the tribe of Levi is the lesser, and the priesthood of Jesus Christ is the greater. And that means that the old covenant is the lesser, and the new covenant is the greater. After all, Hebrews goes on to tell us the new covenant is better and founded on better promises and has a better high priest, Jesus himself. So that's the reason that story is recounted. And the reality is, if we were to imitate Abraham, what would we do? Go out and kill people? Go to war with others? Take their belongings and then dump them on the church lawn? Abraham did that because it was a common tradition in the Middle East to respect those who were greater than you. And remember that Abraham only did it once. It wasn't a mandate, and it wasn't a lifelong requirement either. So do you see how that important event serves as a symbol or a shadow of comparing Levi and Jesus, the Levitical priesthood, and Jesus as our high priest today? That's the whole point of the passage. And yet, what did Jesus Christ do for us? He ushered in a new way called the New Covenant, and He gave us a new way to give and a new way to live. That is motivated by His grace as the Spirit of God lives in us and inspires us to give freely from the heart, not under pressure.